ERIE community, and this is the Red Victoria. We're hosting this place. Okay, I'm going to my talking will be in 3 parts. Normally, in conference they give you 20 minutes, you know, yeah. And they pack a lot of information. So since Larry told me, you know, I can almost speak as long as I want. so I'm going to present you first some historical overview about the plants, some thoughts about our views, European views of plants. Then I will come into more my personal, you know, my life, you know, a little bit, you know, my experiences, and then there will be more specifically about the phenomenology of the ayahuasca experience. So, okay, so our idea of plants comes essentially from Aristotle, who thought that plants are perceived as being without any awareness or mentality, have nutritive souls, are passive without self-direction, and unable to assess the environment around them. Feeding and reproduction are simply mechanical processes. This is the idea that we got. Thomas Aquinas continued without any criticism of these ideas, and we think of our this is the classical fountain source of our ideas of plants, but then also the religious one. The Bible, you'll remember, you know, this is our mythology, which we committed that sin, and be aware that when God gave Noah's said that there was a flood coming and put animals in the ark, but he completely forgot about the plants. You know, so there are no plants there. So I think that our cosmology is somehow phytophobic. You know, we don't pay much attention to the world of plants. Okay, but this was not always the case. In the Germanic cosmology, we have the Hydraxil, the center of the universe. We are in the middle realm, and of course, as you know, Odin gave an eye to be able to drink from the well of remembrance. Of course, this was completely, in many other cultures, trees are absolutely essential. The plants are, for instance, in the dress of this Goldie shaman in Siberia, you have representations of different trees. But with Christianity, this changed drastically. I knew that San Bonifacius was San Bonifacius because he had done the great deed of cutting the Thor's tree in the 8th century. And I lived 7 years in Norway, and then at some point I realized that St. Olav, who is the greatest saint in Norway, look what he has in his hand. You know, it's the axe. And then I started to look for this idea, and I found recently in Estonia the same thing. You have German missionaries hacking the sacred groves of the Estonians in the 13th century. So suddenly I realized that is there a connection between Christianity and deforestation? We have the religious wars, of course, and every war means cutting forests. You know, every time that you have a navy, you have to cut forests in order to build the boats and so on. So I'm trying to look for these connections. And then in Australia, something similar happened. There were trees carved, forests of these trees carved by the natives, and then they were systematically destroyed as well by the Europeans, mostly to have cattle. So most of the 7,500 sacred tree sites recorded in North-South Wales have been destroyed by land clearing and bushfires, farming, and natural decay. Only around 60 carved trees survive today. So these forests were absolutely sacred for them. No? Sorry. Okay. So when I'm going back, I'm going forward. There's a delay.
Oh boy.
There's a delay. So okay. So okay. All right. So thinking about the sources of this destruction, then I realized that There is another very important one, is the domestication of animals that went from the Crescent into Europe very fast. And and as Jaron Daime points out, it's very easy to move plants and animals along. I have it pointed along this line along the meridians, but completely different happens in the America, where you have many different climates in different meridians and even equator crossing here. So much more difficult. And in fact, only 3 animals were domesticated in the Americas. The llama, the cuy in Ecuador, and the turkeys. This is our turkey in Brazil, Fernando. And of course, there was what Alfred Crosby calls the ecological imperialism. There was all the continents were suddenly flooded by these other animals, and something that happens today. So look at this map that I found, this chart that I found on the internet. This is global terrestrial mammal biomass. So this is us, this is livestock, and these are wild animals. So it is incredible what we are doing and as we know, we go through the 6th extinction. And one of the main causes of this extinction, of course, is our addiction for meat. There is no doubt about it. So I also came to the conclusion we cannot be environmentalists. You cannot call yourself environmentalist if you continue the consumption of meat. It simply is, it's logical. It's not enough. It's delicious, whatever. But it doesn't work. It's not sustainable. Then in the Americas, we have this vertical axis. Then we have so many different ecosystems in where the Amerindians were able to grow crops of many kinds. This is in Peru. I mean, this is really a laboratory of using different microclimates and for different plants. And we know, of course, the use by the Andean people of the terraces. They were able to cultivate nearly anywhere. Just amazing. And then of course we know that around the Titicaca Lake, where the potatoes were domesticated at 4,000 meters over sea level, still you were able to domesticate, which is incredible. So these people, in the Amazon, there are raised fields and channels in the Bolivian Amazon, where you have this, and only recently, I mean some years ago, a Finnish archaeologist realized, what is this? And then they went down to the field and realized this is a raised field. They were cultivating plants here, and then they were also trapping fish, so they were able to have huge amounts of proteins in the Amazon area. So this idea of the Amazon very scarcely populated is completely destroyed nowadays. And in fact, we know that the Amazon had great civilizations, only of different kind, of course. There were cities, but not cities, not accumulation of many thousand, tens of thousands of people, but 2,000-3,000 people, and a road, and another one. It was like network occupying hundreds of square kilometers. Plus, we know. I mean, I didn't bring this slides about that. Also, they made the best soils in the world. They were in the Amazon, the so-called Terra Preta do Indio, the black Indian soil, which is incredible. In the Amazon, where there is very little, the topsoil is very, very small. You have places where you have 2 meters of extraordinary soil and living soil that you can even take it and transplant it. So anyway, it will be okay. And then of course we know that Amerindians, the great cultivators, domesticators of the thousands of varieties of potatoes and corn and manioc, and I mean, I didn't bring the slides of everything. Just look at that. So so this the knowledge of plants and cultivation of the Amerindians was amazing, as well as all the main stimulant that we have today, of course, the tobacco, coca, extremely sacred for the Andean people as well as for many Amazonians. Cacao, can you imagine life without chocolate, etc. So, and the different medicines, and of course rubber. There were the Amazonians who discovered rubber. Without rubber, there were no bicycles, no cars in the beginning before they were synthesized, etc. So the contribution of the Amerindians to the plant world was just huge. And of course, also this was the case with the psychoactive plants. I came to the conclusion really that we cannot understand Amerindian cultures without reference to the sacred plants, including tobacco, of course, tobacco and including coca in the south. In the old world, some of these plants were used, but remember the Inquisition was to a great extent the elimination of female shamanism. The women, tens of thousands of women, because they knew about belladonna, tropa belladonna, nigger, and mandrake, and mushrooms, and so on. So in the Americas, here we have evidence of use of psychoactive plants from thousands of years, really. And we have very clear ceramics indicating the importance of things like in these ceramics in Mexico. But peyote was, in Spanish, peyote was considered, of course, by the Spanish something to get in touch with the devil. And I was reading the chronicles and found nearly the same discourse about nearly every of the sacred plants, about the mushrooms, about ayahuasca, about yopo, it's always, they used certain herb, to get in touch with the devil. And of course, all this was systematically persecuted, and we have evidence of psychoactive plants for thousands of years. And even this is from the gold work of the Colombia, until Chutes, in fact, these were called telephone bell sculptures, and until just Chutes, just look at that, this is a Martian, obviously. Okay, in coca, the use of coca goes back 10,000 years, and the use of San Pedro goes, in the Chavin culture, no doubt about it, 1,200 BC, but then very recently, just a few weeks ago, this is the Chavin de Guantar, the famous jaguar shaman holding the San Pedro Cactus in the hand. But very recently, a couple of months ago, came this news in the newspapers that they found San Pedro Cactus perfectly dried in north of Lima in a context that indicated ritual use. And this is 4,000 years old, so no doubt. Now, because it's still the Chavin, okay, but now we have 4,000. So the antiquity of the use of plants in sacred plants in America goes far back. And this also until, relatively recent, 20, 30 years, archaeologists didn't know what this was. They used, they indicate some kind of ritual object, but they didn't know what it was. But it was thanks to the work of a Chilean, I don't remember his name, and the Manuel Torres from Florida International University, that they realized what this was, working in an area far away from the Tiwanaco, but all this area was influenced by the Tiwanaco culture. And here in San Pedro de Atacama, the driest place on earth, anything that you put in the ground stays forever. I've seen hats, 1,500 years old that you could wear today. So it's amazing. And then Manolo and Emanuel and his colleagues found about 25% of the mummies buried in the desert. They had this kind of paraphernalia, a pouch with all this. Even they found the powder, and the powder was analyzed, and they found still traces of bufotenin, and of course the snuff trails with the spoon and everything, so there is no doubt that Anaderantera was extremely sacred for the Tiwanaku culture. But not only there, but also other cultures. Here you have a photo of this is in our garden in Brazil, of the Aranantera colubrina. This tree is 13 years old now.
It's the yopo.
Yeah, well, there are two species. Anaderantera colubrina is in the south, and Anaderantera peregrina in the north, and that is yopo. Now, here you have very clearly, the colubrina used by the Tiwanaku culture, and also the Moche culture here. And then we have Anaderantera peregrina, and this was taken by populations living in what is now Venezuela. They took it to the Antillas. So, this is the Moche culture, and then clear representations of Anaderantera. In this case, associated with the deer, and it's very interesting because you find also the association of San Pedro Cactus with the deer, as well as peyote with the deer in Mexico, and then the reindeer, in Siberia with Amanita muscaria and so on. So it's very interesting, this kind of associations. And then I also realized that the very first book written here in the Americas on a European language was a book about a sacred plant. Columbus, on his second voyage, asked Ramon Pané, a Catalan friar, to write about what the Taino Indians are doing. And the Taino, they were smoking tobacco, Colon took it back, and then they were snuffing cohoba. And Columbus took tobacco back to Europe, but not cohoba. Then he says, once Dennis McKenna once said, if he took the wrong plant, he had taken this other one, it would be the European history, it would change completely. Anyway, so, but then, of course, we have to see this in a context of many more plants. So in the Amazon, you have Virola species, you have in combinations of, for instance, of Banisteriopsis capi, the ayahuasca, together with the yopo as well. But you have a similar combination. I'm not going to talk about the pharmacology here, but just remember that that these combinations are quite all over. You find it all over South America. Okay. And now ayahuasca. But I always put emphasis that we have yaje and ayahuasca. Even when I was writing my doctoral dissertation, this was not clear to me, and I just put it all in the same bag. But there are two different combinations. So in both cases, we have the vine, Banisteriopsis capi, but then if combined with Psychotria viridis from the Rubiaceae, the coffee family, it is ayahuasca. But then the combination with yaje is another plant, it's Diplopterus cabrerana, called chagropanga in some areas, or chilipanga, or even yaje, and sometimes they use this one. So there have been some discussion about how old ayahuasca use is, and I myself did mistakes, saying that probably 1,000 years, but in fact we don't know. I mean, we cannot say that until we have evidence. Really, like in the case of San Pedro, there is no doubt for 1,000 years. In the case of ayahuasca, it's very difficult because there is no organic material preserved in the Amazon. It's just a speculation, but Peter Go, English anthropologist, and then later Brabeck de Mori and Austrian, they are suggesting that ayahuasca probably is not that old, perhaps just several hundred years. Pre-conquest, but perhaps not that old. But I think that this combination probably much older. And in fact, some of the oldest sources we have. We have the distribution of mythology, very large distribution of the mythology of here in this area. So probably this is the oldest, certainly. This combination probably first, and then later this one. These two vines, there are two vines in the same family, Malpighiaceae. So they use the leaves the same way that they use in the ayahuasca, but probably this combination older. We don't know, really. We cannot be sure of it. Okay, but as you know, there was here in the Americas was a systematic persecution of everything that was civilized here. I mean, there was the systematic destruction of the libraries, the Mesoamerican libraries. Diego de Landa in Yucatan in Mexico, you know, he writes, we found a large number of books in these characters, and as they contain nothing in which were not to be seen as superstition and lies of the devil, we burn them all. We burn them all, which they regretted to an amazing degree, which caused them much affliction. Very proud. Only 3 or 4 books survived. So, I could talk a lot about each of these, but okay, I can say that the same thing happened with the Quipu in the Andes, where they were systematically destroyed. The bishops were ordered to burn every Quipu that they could find, because in this Quipu there were only superstition. You know what Quipu is? These threads, different threads and colors, and they are weaving different ways. There were books, you know. So okay, so we have completely different ways of transmission of knowledge. In Egypt, we know they were writing, but these people in Tiwanaku, it's a completely different transmission of knowledge. You take this and then you learn some things, and of course it is until we understood what this was, we have no idea what this could be, you know, why this was used. It is like if our civilization collapsed and the only thing left was this, you know, photograph, and it has some object here, it's some kind of ritual object, you know, obviously, you know, but no idea that with this I could communicate with anybody. Okay, I think that, here they are, the Quipus, you know. Okay, now I go back to ayahuasca or yahe or capi. You know, if I use capi, I refer to the vine. If I say yahe, it's Diplopterus cabrerana. The vine was Diplopterus cabrerana. If I say ayahuasca, it is this other one. But anyway, it was Reiset Dolmatov, Austrian archaeologist and anthropologist working in Monte Barasana in Vaupés. He realized that all iconography among the Tucano is all related to the visions. He wrote a beautiful book called Beyond the Milky Way. He gave a paper and pencils to the Barasana, and they make beautiful drawings, and all related to what they see in the other. Okay, this is the book here, in the other round. Okay, so this kind of drawings. So, this, you know, let me see if I have, okay, I missed the slide. I will go back just. Okay, here, for instance, you see the cosmic serpent. The same idea that we had in the Yggdrasil in the Germanic, exactly the same you find in the Amazon. So the universe, the cosmology, they is surrounded by a big the serpent, the cosmic serpent, and you find the same thing, the same motif. This is in the Sibundoy Valley in Putumayo. Again, you have the same circle, the serpent, and you find it everywhere. This is Sato Chindoy. And as you know, the iconography of the Shipibo, it is directly influenced by the visions. In this society, the men, the shamans sing, and somehow the songs are somehow not literally, not, you know, it's not writing, but the sounds induce musicality. The drawings of the iconography, it is influenced by the musicality of the songs. So we know that the Shipibo, all the art is somehow related to the visionary world. And this happens everywhere. In Mondesiona, the facial painting is also related to what they see in the visions. And even artists today, native painters, native indigenous artists today are also inspired by the visions. Reiset Dolmatov, he realized that most of the gold work of in Colombia is all related to shamanism somehow. It is in this case related to the Burman transformation into bird. But then you find this theme of transformation everywhere in the Americas. This is in Olmec in Mexico. Here we have in the Rebecca Stone wrote this book, The Jaguar Within, showing how the jaguar transformation, you find it in Central America as well, all over in South America. This is in San Agustin, Colombia, again, the jaguar transformation. And so, once I understood this, I realized that really a great part of Amerindian art is related to the experiences. I mean, we know it in the Amazon, we know it for sure in the Tiwanaku case, in the Chavin case, but most probably, you know, it's all related to the transformation. And one of the main elements in shamanism is just transformation. This is incredible. This is from Panama. This is like a transformation into alligator. This is from the great clay culture in Panama. These are just photographed recently in New York in the American Indian Museum. Incredible. I mean, you find the theme everywhere. So now, once we get this idea, we know about the plants, and we know about the altered state of consciousness produced by these plants, suddenly Amerindian art makes sense. Suddenly you say, okay, now, you know, what it didn't make any sense at all. Once you have this idea, especially if you have some experiences yourself, and we will talk about that in the second part. So it is suddenly somehow intelligible. In this case, obviously we have the jaguar transformation, but then we have also this perhaps eagle, and then and then we have snakes here. So we have this now. So this makes perfect sense. Anybody who has taken, say, okay, well, yeah, this may happen. So, but the thing is that when you go back into the oldest Paleolithic art, you find exactly the same thing, So here you have, it's a female, this is from Chauvet in France, 32 or to 35,000 years old. Here we have the legs, the female parts, but then one leg becomes a bison, but then the whole thing, has a feline head. So very similar. I see the relationship. And it was David Lewis Williams who proposed that most probably this is an indication of other set of consciousness. Not necessarily by plants, but some kind, as we know, there are many ways to alter our consciousness, dreaming, drumming, and sweating, and dancing, and etc., isolation and so on. But then, once you get this idea, you have therianthropes everywhere, and all the cultures. You go to Mesopotamia, you go to Egypt, you find it there, you find it in the religion, it's everywhere. So it seems to be like completely one of the. I'm sorry. One of the. I have to go back. Let's see if I go. Okay. So. And so we have it, therianthropes, we have everywhere, including in Christianity, because the therianthropes is the devil. It's obviously a devil. So, and therianthropes, we have it in our films. They are everywhere. It's impossible. It seems that like one of the archetypes, and we find it. We find it. This is a photograph. But put it like that, and then we see these beings. Okay, the last thing that I wanted to say before the break and questions is that, okay, we have put a lot of attention on the visionary aspect, and therefore this emphasis in the ayahuasca research on DMT. But it's Ede Frexka and a team in Debrecen University who have been working on DMT, on the physiological aspects of DMT. And then came to the conclusion, I mean, of course, it is not, it is somatophysiological role, not a psychopathological role, and it is a neuroprotective, not neurotoxic. And it is incredible that DMT can travel, when you have the monoamine oxidase, it goes crosses the blood-brain barrier, goes into serotonin receptor site, but then it goes inside the neurons into sigma receptors. You know, how is it possible that we, you know, that our organism will allow this molecule to go all the way inside the neurons and stay there for about a week or two, you know? So that indicates there has to have a role, and Attila Szabo from Debrecen University came to the conclusion that it has a very important role in the immune system. Okay, but that's DMT. But then harmine as well. And the physiological effects of harmine are huge, you know, antimicrobial, antifungal, anti-tumor, cytotoxics, antioxidant, you know, I mean, it's just amazing. Out of over 100,000 compounds tested, it was the only one to stimulate the regeneration of lost pancreatic beta cells neurogenesis, which means, you know, for diabetes. And Jordi Riva recently found, working on with rat brain, found that harmine and tetrahydroharmine produce new neurons. Neurogenesis, you know. So, my goodness, you know, so we have, of course, we are so obsessed with the vision, well, but these are the physiological effects. And I think that it's very interesting that the same molecule we produce that, I mean the DMT, we will do this in the immune system and it will give us visions. You know, this is very interesting that you have these two combinations. Okay. I think that, okay, this is a painting by Rick Harlow. I'm curated in an exhibition in Canton, New York, which I have some cards here that you can get. We'll let you to have a look at this exhibition. It's very beautiful. Okay, so we're going to make
do you want to do a couple
break.
questions on this first and then do a break, or you want to do
No. First, we have an important announcement.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know. Like these.
It is Larry's birthday. He's 40 years old. So perhaps we should sing the happy birthday.
Oh boy.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Larry. Happy birthday to you. Something coming.
Oh, look at that. Oh my goodness. Cool. You guys didn't know you were coming here to celebrate my birthday, did you?
Today's a big day in Larry's life. Not only is it his 40th birthday, but he never would have imagined that on his 40th birthday he'd be holding an amazing event with one of his main mentors in the life, Luis Eduardo Luna. So it's really special for him and special to have you all here celebrating with us. So we're going to pass out some cake during the break, and Larry gets applause. Yay.
So we have some questions now for this part, or we just go directly?
Do you want to do, I mean, we can do a few questions on this, so that we can, like, if anyone has any, then we can go ahead. So does anyone have any questions on this? If you do, raise your hand, and I'll kind of like get you in order there.
Yeah.
Bob?
Okay.
Hey, that was such a great sort of short history and geography of plant sacraments. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You were talking about yahe and ayahuasca, and you mentioned psychotria viridis.
Ayahuasca and
You mentioned psychotria viridis.
yes, psychotria, yes.
Do you have any comments about the psychotria alba, psychotria carthaginensis? Are those?
Yeah, well, psychotria carthaginensis, yes, probably used, and there is another one, psychotria pepigiana, no? It is possible that many other psychedelics, there are thousands of psychedelics, I mean there are something like 2,000 or 3,000 psychedelics, but probably there are others as well that contain dimethyltryptamine. Carthaginensis for sure. Pepigana, I think that Jonathan Ott did also some tests, and it is also, but probably there are others. Yeah.
So you mentioned the interesting bifurcation between immune enhancement and visionary ability.
Right.
Is there any insight that would lend us to find the ultimate category of psychedelics based on what we're observing on a neurological level? That's, in terms of receptors, or is there a conceptual handle on the uniqueness of this psychedelic?
You know, Jeanne Achterberg, she wrote a book about imagery and healing. You know, and I think that we have here, I mean, and we know, I mean, it works, you know. I remember many years ago I was talking to Joey Camilla, the biofeedback, the father of biofeedback.
Joe Camilla.
You know, and he said, you know, you have somebody thinking that you has an infection, and you have a counter, and your blood cell goes up, you know. So we know that imagery and the physiology, you know, they are connected. I believe that under other set of consciousness, even more so. I think it's more effective. I would go to this and next talk about imagery. I think that we have here a gold mine to work. Now we need physiological studies, physiological correlates. You know. So yeah, we need more research. I mean, you know, for this kind of work. Yeah. Yes.
So you said you saw like very common themes occurring in artifacts found in different continents, across different ecosystems and stuff.
Yes.
So it's easy to find patterns and looking for them. My question is, how do you kind of avoid, the bit of confirmation bias? Like how do you avoid confirmation bias in your field of study?
Confirmation. I think.
Confirmation bias. Like if you're looking for a particular theme, you might see it, but
okay. Well, in the case of the jaguar motif, I mean, it's impossible. You know, it's just everywhere.
Confirmation bias, yeah.
Yeah.
If you, just so everyone in the back could hear, maybe repeat the question.
Okay.
So my question is, in anthropology and in this field of study, how does he avoid confirmation bias?
Information bias. Yeah, like, I mean, it was said that Gordon was on these emotions everywhere. Yeah, but the theme of transformation, there is no doubt. I mean, the jaguar transformation is everywhere. The eagle transformation and other animals. I mean, in the Panama area, especially the alligator. The thing is just a question to recognize. First, you know, it looks. Then you begin to see, well, here this is a person that is transforming. You know, it's just a question of finding the key, I think. Yeah, but I think it is quite obvious in many cases. In other cases, perhaps you don't have to. Yeah.
Another question in the back there?
Yeah.
In the back? Adrian, go ahead.
Hi. So perhaps I didn't hear it, but the figure at Tiwanaku, what in fact has been determined to be the object of use holding?
Yes, yeah, it's the paraphernalia. In this pouch, you have the snuff trails, the seeds, the powder ready, the spoon, the inhalator, everything is there. So there is no doubt. And then when they were doing the excavation, they found 25% of the male had things. You know, in San Pedro Cactus, they find these bundles, you know, the funerary bundles. You rehydrate them slowly, and then you are able to peel all the textiles. You know, and they are in many cases perfectly preserved. And they found in 25% of the cases the whole, you know, paraphernalia. So I think that Manuel Torres collected over 200 different snuffs, you know, snuff trails, you know, and he had been doing a study of the iconography of the Tiwanaku based on that. He could not do it up in Bolivia because there is very little preserved. There's almost no organic material preserved around Lake Titicaca. It's too humid, destroyed immediately.
Thank you.
Yes.
You started out sort of talking about the sacredness that a lot of cultures had around trees, and I can't recall exactly, but I've come across a few instances of people sort of coming in contact with shamans in the Amazon, and then the shamans sort of talking about sort of like another aspect of their work with working with big trees, the big forest trees. I think it might have been Bruce Lamb's book, a couple other instances. And I know there's a big tradition of like mixing the two, the copy and the psychotree with other aspects. So I'm just wondering if you've ever talked to anyone or know any resources that sort of cover the kind of the big trees.
Yeah, yes. Okay, when I was doing my doctoral dissertation back in the 80s, I found around 70 admixture plants to ayahuasca. And then in fact in the Secundoy Valley, Bristol many years before me, he came to the conclusion that the yahe was like a tool to find new, to increase their pharmacopoeia. So, because adding another plant to the yahe, they will give differences. Of course, in their worldview, the plants have a spirit. And so you will be in touch then with the spirit of this plant, and this plant may be even in the tradition of Peru, give you a special song and so on. I will come to that in the second part of the talk. But anyway, yes, in the Amazon, they talk about the paleos. Palo is big trees. You know? And Don Emilio, my teacher, he said, I'm just a little ayahuasquerito. You know? I don't know about the big trees like other people, you know. So there is this tradition. And I know that Susana Susana, oh, yeah. Say it about the palos, you know, because you know about that more than I do. Yeah, say it. Sobre los palos.
¿De qué hable de los palos?
Que no solamente es el ayahuasca, sino que están los otros palos maestros.
Yeah, so you can mix the ayahuasca too with adding certain barks. But the barks have their own entities, and they can like also be drunk normally in a concoction independently. So they have their own properties and their structure, their energy. They are dieted, and they can be added into the ayahuasca for specific purposes.
Oh,
yes.
Just to follow up on our earlier conversation about the sustainability of ayahuasca and farming it with trees, can you say something about that?
I mean, for me coming here, by the way, I was not in the Bay Area since 2000, and then, and then before that it was very brief, you know. But my big time here was in 1973 when I was in Berkeley with Terence McKenna. So I will tell you about that. Okay. But yes, there is a problem, you know, with the sustainability because there are hundreds of groups everywhere. You know, it's amazing, and I don't know what is happening with that. But one good thing is that I have a friend, South African botanist, and he realized that if you combine, you can use ayahuasca to recuperate very poor soils. Because it grows in clay, you know, and then if you combine it with fast-growing trees that also are able to take the nourishment from so you can have trees and the vines, and you could relatively easy within 8 years create a whole canopy, you know, with ayahuasca and some of these fast-growing trees, they do not block the light, so you can have another layer of fruit trees or whatever. So I see that perhaps this demand for ayahuasca, if it is taken in the right way, it could be used for the recuperation and making it more economically viable than, of course, cutting everything and putting a few cows. So yeah.
Susan?
I was thinking of, what you presented at the beginning.
Yeah.
And your idea of the cattle being like part of like this
Yeah.
construction and how it happened, right? Like And you know, when I see all the iconography that you showed of the animal transformation, but you know, what do you make from like not having plant transformation? What is it that you know it's not there?
Yeah.
They hold the plants, they cultivate the plants, they drink it, eat it, but
I think I've been thinking.
Repeat the question. Sorry.
Okay, can I read?
yeah,
Yeah, I think you have the mic, so it's easier.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, why not plant transformation? Why only animal transformation? I've been thinking about that, but I think that we cannot recognize intelligence if it is not somehow anthropomorphic. You know, I mean, you get a tree, and where do you look? You know, I mean, you know, I think that everywhere, you know, you find this kind of anthropomorphization of the plant somehow. You know, sometimes snake could be, you know, a representation of the vine.
Or peyote.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So it may be that when we see a representation of the plant, we don't relate because we cannot recognize. We have to see ourselves. You know, we have to somehow see another anthropos. You know? Okay, now I will come to that as well in the phenomenology, because I've been thinking about it.
I just want to say that you might actually see that in some mythology, like Krishna being blue might be symbolic of the mushroom.
Oh, I see.
We don't know that for sure, but there's some evidence. That would be kind of early.
You also have Groot cut in the movie, the superhero movie. We have this Groot character. That's basically a plant which is like an anthropomorphized plant. That's very modern.
Right.
The Groot, I think they're talking about Groot, also a plant being that kind of transformed.
What's the question?
One more question over here, and then maybe we'll take a break.
Yes.
One more question, sir, over in the corner.
Yeah, I'm just curious what your perspective or opinions are on the use of ayahuasca becoming more widespread, such as in California.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
how do you feel about that?
okay. I'm a little bit shocked here in a way, you know, because I was back in Peru in the 80s, you know, 1980. As far as I know, I mean, I am Amazonian, I was born in Amazon, but educated, you know, in Bogota and in Spain and in Norway. So as far as I know, I was the first, let's say, Western, you know, in which, but I was interested in what happens. So I did the diet and all that, and so for me, it's like, I mean, what is happening now, you know, it's just incredible, this development. Of course, it has positive aspects, but as well as negative aspects. You know, because a lot of unprepared people are giving sessions and getting money, and then I think that I better talk about that in the second part, because I have something to say about it. Okay. So we make the break.
Take a little break now. Thank you, everyone.
Let's take.